A fascinating report has been made on the test subject Nemesis T-type, following the implantation of the parasite into the latest model Tyrant. During the incubation process, the Nemesis developed a self-awareness and attempted to escape the research facility along with its companions. This display indicates the dramatically increased intelligence of the test subject, but, moreover, signals the dangers of BOWs becoming new intelligent life forms that may one day rebel against humanity. When that happens, would humanity even survive? Back in 1999, when humanity was doing its best to survive the streets of Raccoon City in Resident Evil 3, those in Japan were treated to a wealth of lore and backstory from the official guidebook, like how Nemesis tried to lead an escape from the research lab, along with its fellow test subjects. So to shine a light on information like this for everyone who may have missed it, we'll go through the Q&A chapter of the Biohazard 3 Last Escape official guidebook. There are more than 20 questions with Kawamura Yasuhisa, who is in charge of writing the scenario and setting. I often see these questions online and there's a lot to cover, plus a few surprises along the way, so here we go. It took time for the US military to surround Raccoon City. That includes the time it took to reach a congressional resolution to do so. The city was surrounded due to presidential decree, however, quite a few civilians were able to flee before then. Many of those that escaped were caught in the cordon set by the Army and National Guard. Those that failed screening tests were quarantined in accordance to their level. And by level, I'm assuming they mean level of infection, something we'd later see in the Outbreak games, which featured an infection gauge. That leaves me to wonder about the fates of those with a high infection level, and realistically, how quickly more of the vaccine could be made and distributed before it was too late. Nemesis, who is referred to by his nickname in Japan, Chaser, but sometimes translated as Pursuer in English, was deployed in a dedicated carrier, like the helicopter that dropped the Tyrant in Resident Evil 2. On the other hand, hunters and so on are brought in by land because there are simply too many. In the Resident Evil 3 remake, you can find large trucks which could have been used to transport BOWs into the city, even one container with a Hunter Gamma inside. I can see why they had used trucks just by looking at Operation Raccoon City, where hunters were carried in by helicopter, and the chaotic airspace looks almost as dangerous as their BOW cargo. Of course, in the RE3 remake, you can see the helicopter used to deploy Nemesis in the intro. You can also find the pod Nemesis was dropped in near Jill's apartment. Nemesis was ordered to eliminate all STARS members in Raccoon City. However, like hunters and other BOWs, Nemesis is used in experimental combat, and its orders are limited to be carried out within Raccoon City. By narrowing the target to the talented STARS members, the plan is to demonstrate its high-level abilities. It's not mentioned in the book, but in an interview with Project Umbrella, which I'll link to below, Kawamura elaborated how defeating STARS served a greater purpose. The goal of the Nemesis project was to hunt down and defeat the people that managed to defeat the American-made Tyrant, thereby establishing Umbrella Europe as the superior branch. So defeating STARS was the first step in gaining favor of the Umbrella top executives. Step 1. Demonstrate value. Nemesis has the intelligence to understand and carry out commands, and the Nemesis development team has a person in charge of training it. That officer in charge is responsible for having Nemesis memorize videos and photos of STARS members. Big thank you to Resident Evil modder Leggyboy for painting that scene for us. If you can, please check out his fantastic mods on YouTube and Patreon. He also shared the real-life location of the background from the infamous picture hidden in Wesker's desk. Check out the Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and you'll see it matches the James Garfield statue. So, you know where to go if you want to do some game-accurate cosplay. Just keep an eye out for this man. Kawamura further detailed the level of intelligence of the Nemesis parasite in the Project Umbrella interview. He said, "The parasite isn't overly intelligent, but it can boost the intelligence of its host, likening it to a dual-core CPU." He also said that other BOWs with intelligence can be controlled through verbal commands or special frequencies. However, trainers rarely appear on the battlefield, and the BOWs basically act on their own judgment. But I'm thrilled to know that somewhere in the world of Resident Evil, as rare as it may be, there are actual monster trainers shouting commands to BOWs in battle. The name Nemesis was given by the development team at the European 6th Research Institute and means the goddess of vengeance. It may be in reference to enacting revenge on Jill and the others after the unfortunate defeat of the first model tyrant from Resident Evil 1.
You viral cultured freak!
Guess they took that personally. To find the full origin of the name, I had to look a little deeper. As Kawamura told Project Umbrella, the ultimate goal of the Nemesis project was for Umbrella Europe to gain favor over the American branch, thus forcing the Americans to bend to their will. The name Nemesis was chosen as part of that power struggle. By avenging the loss of the tyrant to the stars, Umbrella Europe would gain superiority over their true target, their American Umbrella rivals. In other words, Nemesis refers to not only stars, but also the Umbrella rivalry. However, as the countdown to destruction goes, the connection to stars in the Nemesis name would be lost after being retconned. In Wesker's Report 2, Nemesis was changed from a recent BOW project to a much older one, and the name can be traced back 10 years before the Mansion incident. If you read the entry for July 1st, 1988, as it appears in the Resident Evil Archives 2, Wesker talks about the rumored bioweapon called the Nemesis Project, or in the old Capcom translation, the Nemesis Plan. Wesker recalls how they were able to get a sample parasite delivered in a box bearing the name Nemesis Prototype. By having it written on the box, it means Nemesis had the name 10 years before the battle with the Tyrant. The name wouldn't at all be related to those meddling stars, and relentlessly hunting Jill seems just coincidentally vengeful. The Japanese version of Wesker's Report 2 is worth a look because it doesn't exactly say Nemesis Prototype was written on the box. Rather, it says, "That thing dropped off at the heliport was in a small box." And then the following line below in quotations, it just says, "Nemesis Prototype." Of course, it could very well be implied it's printed on the box, but to me it reads like he's just saying what it was for the reader's benefit. He also keeps calling the prototype "it" and "that sample" in quotations, which honestly, I'm not sure if it carries any kind of nuance or meaning other than to draw attention, but I thought it was interesting anyways. Personally, I like the layered meaning of Nemesis referring to stars and as part of the power struggle between Umbrella rivals, and to me the Japanese version doesn't clearly lock it to 10 years before the Tyrant battle. Regardless of origin or reference, just going by the definition of the word Nemesis as the inescapable agent of someone or something's downfall, it's still the perfect name.
Wait! How did he find me?
What? What do you think you're talking about?
Sadly, Dario was unable to endure the terror of the zombies that entered the warehouse, and when he opened the door of the container to escape, he became surrounded. Cut down before his prime, this is the end for the great Dario Rosso. The mayor was the first to flee and is being protected by the US military. If you need a refresher, the mayor, Michael Warren, is described in the Resident Evil Archives as a man who secretly colluded with Umbrella, allowing them to build factories in Raccoon City for his own financial gain. With Umbrella's unchecked growth, he panicked, abandoning the people of the city, including his own daughter, to their gruesome fates. And it's pretty ironic when you read the city guide in the EX files from Resident Evil 2. Written by the mayor, he describes Raccoon as a town dedicated to families. There's a connection in the EX files to the 2002 Resident Evil remake I was really surprised to see. In the OP instructions, Hunk is ordered to retrieve the G-Virus and deliver it to Loire Village. If Loire sounds familiar, we recently talked about it in the Secrets from the Mansion video I did with Welsh. In that, we looked at how paintings on the wall of the trap room were based on artworks taken from a chateau in Loire Valley. Welsh told me Loire was likely added to the EX files as a promotion for the Biohazard 2 audio drama. Released only in Japan, this original story saw Ada Wong visiting Loire Valley in the midst of a T-virus outbreak and the village's subsequent destruction. Ada even ends up in a spooky old chateau above a laboratory. Big E is a genuine American rock band from Raccoon City. They're so popular that you can't find a single person who doesn't listen to them in town. At the time, they were on their way back home from a tour and all members survived. It's thought Big E is named after Biggie Smalls. The book doesn't mention anything about that, but considering the Mo Money signs around Raccoon City, a reference to the track Mo Money, Mo Problems, in a game notorious for its pop culture references, I wouldn't say it's unbelievable.
I'm not dead yet.
From time to time, Marvin recovered from a half-conscious daze and regained his strength enough to move near the locker. But anyone else wondering why he wasn't eaten by zombies here? How Nikolai survived is shrouded in mystery. However, it's certain that the techniques he used were inherited from his training in the special forces he belonged to in the former Soviet Union. After that, Nikolai isn't seen for some time to avoid being drawn into the fight between Jill and Nemesis.
That guy doesn't know the meaning of the word dead.
Jill rang the bell on September 28th. She remained in a coma, resulting in her sleeping for more than an entire day. Not even Nemesis could wake her up. Although the hospital is funded by Umbrella, it's purely a private medical facility. The hunter was captured, and the hospital staff put their lives on the line to sedate it and bring it to the laboratory. But you gotta wonder, why does a private hospital have tanks like this in the first place?
Gray hair and the ugly mug.
Supervisors, not just limited to Tyrell, are under the orders to gather or destroy all kinds of important documents, including hospital medical records. The reason he was opening the safe was to see if he could get his hands on even a little bit of information. As it's written in the diary found in the hospital, the doctors were in the final stages of research before completing the vaccine. However, at the time, most of the doctors and nurses were in a state of confusion due to viral infection, and in the end, everyone became zombies and not a single person was saved. The zombies crawling out of their graves were humans infected with the T-virus that were buried in a state of suspended animation, only to resume after being buried in the ground. And for Brad, because he was infected by a strong T-virus contained within the tentacle of Nemesis, his brain was destroyed but his body didn't die. I see this question often, so just to clarify, no, the T-virus doesn't revive the dead here, and Brad's body was just clinging to life until the virus took him. Kawamura wanted to include a mode where you play as a zombified Brad, but it was cut due to being too costly. I'd love to know what this mode would have looked like, and was this idea reused for playing as a zombie in Outbreak?
What happened?
Farewell.
Yes, they were familiar with each other.
You mean the guy who shot you?
It was a complete accident the military was at the incineration plant. There are people from Umbrella within the US government. However, some of them are double agents and also passing on Umbrella's information to the US government. The US Special Forces that were annihilated at the factory were sent there with the goal of securing the newly developed G-virus and the protection of its developers. But because they didn't have accurate information about the facility, they ended up far from their destination, taking a lift to the incineration plant. Meanwhile, Umbrella caught onto this information and ordered one tyrant to be dropped at the police station and the remaining tyrants to be dropped at the incineration plant. As a result, the tyrants and special forces engage in a fierce battle, during which time the G-virus was recovered by the Umbrella Special Forces who took control of the lab. Furthermore, the rail cannon brought by the US military for use against G creatures was left unused, as they were unable to respond to the tyrant's surprise attack.
How did a girl like you manage to survive?
Nemesis saw Jill come into contact with Nikolai and speak with him several times, recognizing him to be Jill's companion. Ultimately, his fears become reality, and being seen with Jill causes him to be killed. This is in reference to the Japanese version where Nikolai says, "That woman is dangerous," but it was changed in English.
No, we can't trust her.
Why?
It's a new type of bomb, like a thermobaric bomb, that has power comparable to a nuclear weapon. Details are unknown, but its radioactive contamination appears to be extremely low. In this story, it can be said to be the US military's ultimate weapon, in addition to the rail cannon. It's stated in the Resnivel archives to be a nuclear weapon, but that's not true.
It's really powerful.
When it comes to Umbrella's secret products, such as viral weapons and BOWs, the United States itself is quite familiar as it's a major client. However, this only applies to products that have been sold, and the US can't get detailed information on what Umbrella deems top secret, like development status. Also, the reason why the US doesn't condemn Umbrella is because of the dangers it would place on itself. The collusion between government officials and Umbrella is deep, and hitting out at Umbrella would risk exposing the dark side of the US government itself. This structure is true in many developed countries as well. Umbrella's black market products are distributed all over the world, with many powerful politicians receiving funding. After parting with Chris, Barry spent time trying to get his family to a safe place. Then, after his family had settled down, he tried to get in touch with Jill so they could meet up with Chris, but he lost contact with her. Due to that, he returns to Raccoon City and uses a civilian helicopter to rescue Jill. Barry entered the city at low altitudes as soon as the blockade lifted to drop the missile and rescues Jill in the short amount of time remaining. Of course, he risked his life believing Jill was still alive.
Barry, you're so optimistic.
Jill was indeed searching for the G-virus. She didn't know the details, but she knew for a fact that important research was being done there.
It was Raccoon City's last chance.
The Last Escape, which is the Japanese title, means the end of Raccoon City and a departure from the stage that has supported the series. And you know what? After all these years, I always thought it was referring to Jill. My mind is blown. Creating new fears, building in core fans, and focusing on making a game to be played and not just watched. We face the daily challenges unique to Bio3's development and the condensed development time, but being surrounded by an enthusiastic staff in pursuit of scary and interesting things made every day fun. And you know what, despite the hurdles they faced and changes foisted onto them mid-development, I can see the enthusiasm they poured into this game, full of details, new mechanics, and Easter eggs. They really made something special. And they managed to achieve all of this in spite of the allegedly awful curry and rice from the Capcom lunchroom. Thanks for watching, and if you didn't get that joke, please check out my other RE3 video. And again, thank you to Leggyboy for volunteering his time and talent. I absolutely love that scene he came up with. Please check out his awesome mods if you can. And thank you to everyone who supported me on Patreon. I know it's been a while, but since my last video, I started learning Blender to hopefully make my videos better. And you know what that means? Maybe one day I can put Leon's armpits on almost anything.